Good evening from Mission Control in Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room, and welcome to our all-night coverage of the return to Earth of 3 crew members from the International Space Station aboard the Roscosmos Soyuz MS-24 spacecraft. At this hour, preparing to depart, are NASA's Loral O'Hara, Oleg Novitskiy, the Soyuz commander, and Belarusian spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya. Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya completing 14 days in space, having launched on March 23rd on the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft, along with NASA's Tracy Dyson, who is well now into her 6-month mission aboard the International Space Station. O'Hara is completing 204 days in space, a mission spanning 3,264 orbits of the Earth and 86.5 million miles. We'll talk more about O'Hara's mission aboard the International Space Station in a moment. Here in Mission Control, the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers is wrapping up its shift. They will be handing over to the team that will be overseeing undocking and landing operations from the International Space Station perspective throughout the course of the night. Meanwhile, a half a world away at the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov outside of Moscow, Russian flight controllers who will be in charge of tonight's operation are preparing for the return to Earth of O'Hara, Novitskiy, and Vasilevskaya. You can consider Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya basically part of a taxi crew, Vasilevskaya flying under an intergovernmental agreement between Roscosmos and Belarus to conduct experiments on behalf of Belarusian researchers. Novitskiy is wrapping up his 4th flight into space and a grand total of 545 days in space on those 4 missions. We're about 25 minutes or so away from the time that the 3 departing crew members will be saying goodbye to their Expedition 70 crewmates that they have been working with during the course of their time on orbit. They will be departing in their Soyuz vehicle with an undocking scheduled 3 hours and 50 minutes from now. The undocking is scheduled at 10:54 p.m. Central Time, 11:54 p.m. Eastern Time. There will be a physical separation of the Soyuz from the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. Essentially, hooks will be commanded to be opened. That will take about 90 seconds to complete. Springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another, and the Soyuz will be free from its mooring that it has been attached to since last September, when it brought O'Hara, Oleg Kononenko, and Nikolai Chub to the International Space Station. Kononenko and Chub are remaining on board the station in the final segment of their year-long mission into space. They'll return in September on the recently arrived Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft along with Tracy Dyson.
Okay. D1 must be illuminated, but it is not.
The actual transition, the formal transition of Expedition 70 to Expedition 71 on board the International Space Station begins at the time of undocking. Expedition 71 will be led by the current station commander, Oleg Kononenko, who has spent more days in space than any other human. In fact, on June 4th, he will pass a significant milestone of 1,000 days in space on his 5 flights. From left to right, you're looking at the Expedition 71 crew: Alexander Grabenkin, Tracy Dyson, Mike Barrett, Nikolai Chub, Matt Dominic, Oleg Kononenko, and Jeanette Epps. They will continue their mission aboard the station, a mission of research and of a very busy complement of visiting vehicle traffic comings and goings over the next several weeks.
F3, F9, F13 are eliminated. T is T1 and T5.
The destination for O'Hara, Novitskiy, and Vasilevskaya tonight is a landing site in the remote south-central portion of Kazakhstan, about 91 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. That is where the Soyuz descent module will touch down to complete a parachute-assisted landing. that will bring the 3 crew members home. A team of Roscosmos and NASA personnel are in the staging city of Karaganda to the northeast of the landing site. They will be deployed to the landing site in helicopters a few hours from now, awaiting the arrival of the Soyuz, and then the ultimate extraction of the crew from the descent module, the center section of the 3-section Soyuz vehicle. That is the only section that survives the blast of re-entry and the searing heat that will build up to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit around the spacecraft as it descends through the atmosphere for its parachute-assisted touchdown.
Confirmed.
Once the crew is extracted, they'll be placed in chairs right next to the capsule to have a few moments to be able to regain their Earth legs, if you will, as they readjust their bodies to the force of gravity, particularly O'Hara, coming home from 204 days in space. She and Kononenko and Chub were launched back on September 15th of last year. The 3 crew members will be loaded into 3 separate helicopters for a 2-hour flight back to the staging city of Karaganda, where they will split up. O'Hara will board a NASA plane heading back to Houston, while Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya will board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft bound for their training base in Star City, Russia, outside of Moscow.
And speakers?
24, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and -11. All steps prescribed have been completed. Copy. We are an autonomous. Reminder.
Once the Soyuz undocks from the Rassvet module, there'll be a series of separation burns to begin an opening rate that will take the Soyuz to about 39 kilometers or so away from the International Space Station, a very safe distance away from the complex, for the deorbit burn that will be a 4-minute, 41-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz braking rockets, if you will, to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. The deorbit burn is scheduled early tomorrow morning at 1:23 and 53 seconds a.m. Central Time, 2:23 and 53 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. Once the deorbit burn is complete, about 23 minutes later, there will be a computer command to pyrotechnically separate the 3 sections of the Soyuz, the orbital module, which is the bulbous top section of the Soyuz vehicle, and the instrumentation and propulsion module, which is the lower section of the Soyuz. Strapped into their respective seats in the center section, or the descent module, Novitskiy, as the Soyuz commander, will be in the center seat, flanked to his right by Loral O'Hara and to his left by Marina Vasilevskaya. The module separation is scheduled at 1:51 a.m. Central Time, 2:51 a.m. Eastern Time. About 3 minutes later, the Soyuz and its 3 occupants will hit the top of the Earth's atmosphere, what is called entry interface, at an altitude of about 62 miles, at which point the 3 crew members will begin to feel the tug of Earth's gravity against their bodies. They will then, about a minute and a half later, enter into the plasma regime, where the temperatures around the Soyuz will begin to build up. The heat shield will be pointed in the direction of travel to ablate that heat and keep the crew members on board the descent module nice and safe as they enter the atmosphere. That's about a 4-minute time frame from entry to exit from that plasma regime. Maximum G loads will build up on the crew to about 4 to 5 Gs at that point. And then, just about 15 minutes before touchdown, the command will be issued to open the parachutes. First, an extraction chute, followed by a drogue chute, and then the main parachute at an altitude of about 6.5 miles off the ground. Landing is scheduled at 2:17 and 36 seconds a.m. Central Time, 3:17 and 36 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, again about 91 miles to the southeast of Jezkazgan, landing occurring in the early afternoon on Saturday in the Kazakh steppe, about 6 hours and 43 minutes before sunset. About 20 minutes or so from now, we'll be seeing the crew members in the passageway, if you will, between the Rassvet module and the hatchway to the Soyuz MS-24 spacecraft. They will have an opportunity to say goodbye to their crewmates on board the station, who will remain as the Expedition 71 crew. Again, Expedition 71 formally beginning at the time of undocking. Once the three crew members float aboard the Soyuz, they will close the hatch. And on both sides of the docking interface between Soyuz and Rassvet, there will be a series of leak checks conducted to make sure that we have an airtight seal between the two vehicles, if you will, before the small vestibule or passageway between Soyuz and Rassvet is depressurized down to vacuum to set the stage for undocking. Once again, O'Hara is wrapping up 204 days in space and aboard the International Space Station, a mission that has spanned 3,264 orbits of the Earth, 86.5 million statute miles. For Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya, they will have completed 14 days in space, 12 days aboard the station. If you recall, their initial launch attempt, along with Tracy Dyson back on March 21st, ran into a last-second abort, and the launch was rescheduled down in Baikonur at the Cosmodrome 2 days later on March 23rd. At that time, the launch was perfectly nominal, and their climb to orbit and their docking to the space station back on March 25th. Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya will have completed 224 orbits of the Earth, their own mission spanning 5.9 million statute miles. Loral O'Hara saw the arrival of 8 visiting vehicles during her time aboard the station: 2 SpaceX Cargo Dragon spacecraft, 2 Russian Progress resupply ships, 2 Crew Dragon spacecraft, 1 Northrop Grumman Cygnus vehicle, and 1 Russian Soyuz vehicle. That was the one that carried Novitskiy, Dyson, and Vasilevskaya to the station just 2 weeks ago. She also saw the departure of 7 visiting vehicles: 1 SpaceX Cargo Dragon, 2 SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicles, 2 Russian Progress resupply ships, 1 Northrop Grumman Cygnus vehicle, and 1 Russian Soyuz vehicle that brought Frank Rubio home in September of last year to complete a U.S. record-setting mission for Rubio. As you look at a view here in Mission Control in Houston, we're about to have a 4-minute loss of signal through our tracking and data relay satellite system. We'll pick up communications with the station as well as downlink video as the station moves into a daylight pass. The station is currently flying 260 miles above the Earth, traveling from southwest to northeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator over the southern Indian Ocean. Once again, we will be reacquiring our downlink signal from the station just a few minutes from now, at which point, shortly thereafter, we should be seeing the crew members gathering in the passageway in the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the station for an opportunity to say farewell. O'Hara, Novitskiy, and Vasilevskaya preparing to enter the Soyuz MS-24 and close the hatch to begin deorbit and landing preparations. With the return to Earth of the Soyuz MS-24 in the wee hours of Saturday, the stage will be set for the next series of major operational activities for the International Space Station crew. On April 25th, Kononenko and Chub will be conducting a 7-hour spacewalk outside of the Poisk module of the International Space Station to deploy and retrieve experiment packages. The next day, on April 26th, the SpaceX Cargo Dragon spacecraft that is docked to the Zenith, or space-facing port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station, is scheduled to undock. That, in turn, sets the stage for the undocking, fly-around, and relocation of the Crew 8 Dragon spacecraft, with Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Alexander Grebenkin on board. About a short 40-minute operation that will relocate parking places for that SpaceX Dragon crew craft, opening up the forward port of the Harmony module for the expected arrival in early May of the Boeing Starliner spacecraft that was fueled for launch down at the Kennedy Space Center earlier today. Preparations on track for the launch of Starliner on the crew flight test mission that is scheduled for launch on the evening of May 6th. Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams in the home stretch of their training regime as they board Starliner for a 24-hour trip to the International Space Station, and again a docking to the forward port of the Harmony module, and a stay of around 8 days or so as they conduct a test flight of the Boeing Starliner vehicle.
Moscow station on SG-1.
Отвечаем в SG-1.
Go ahead on SG-1.
Сергей, а как вы сейчас представляете, вот у нас делается вот это вот, что мы будем делать?
So, what are we going to do during the PO? Will it be recorded or live streamed?
Секунду, мы как раз вот насчет этого.
Standby 1, we are discussing this. Give us a minute, please.
По Москве в канале SG1 для Олега.
Station Moscow on SG1 for Oleg and TV coverage. We were discussing this with management and we decided that we will not do the coverage from the SM, not to distract you. So we'll just gather in MRM1 as usual for the farewell ceremony.
Посещение сами, то есть, ну, чтобы мы видели.
So that we could see everything on the camera, the farewell ceremony and closing hatches. So we will not activate the camera in SM, and at the appointed time we'll just go towards the hatch. That's correct. And 240, 250 is the hatch closure, is that right?
Да, верно, 040.
That is correct. 040.
Мимо 1 СУ это 040, да.
040 is MRM-1SU. So do we close our hatch first?
As you hear the interpretation of the discussion between the Russian controllers in Korolyov and the crew aboard the International Space Station about camera configuration for the farewells between the departing crew and the rest of the expedition crew on the station. There's our first excellent look at the Soyuz MS-24 docked to the Rassvet module for the next 3.5 hours before it will undock. Again, the undocking is scheduled at 10:54 p.m. Central Time, 11:54 p.m. Eastern Time. You can see the three sections of the Soyuz. At the bottom of your screen attached to Rassvet is the orbital module with the docking mechanism. In the center is the descent module, again the only section of the Soyuz that returns to Earth with the crew members on board. And at the very top of your screen with the solar arrays clearly in view is the instrumentation and propulsion module. The three sections will be pyrotechnically separated from one another about 23 minutes after the deorbit burn, with the descent module facing the direction of travel, its heat shield ready to repel the heat of reentry and bring the crew members home to a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan, about 91 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. Once again, in the staging city of Karaganda, Kazakhstan, which is about 400 kilometers to the northeast of the landing site, the NASA and Roscosmos and Search and Recovery Force teams are preparing to leave their hotels to gather at the Karaganda airport to begin boarding helicopters that will make a 2-hour trek to the landing site. Other crew members will be boarding an Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft to fly to Zhezkazgan. The helicopters will be refueled in Zhezkazgan before they make it on the final leg of their journey to the landing site to conserve fuel for the return trip post-landing, with O'Hara, Novitskiy, and Vasilevskaya each in their own helicopter to head back to Karaganda, where the crew will split up, as we mentioned earlier. O'Hara boarding a NASA plane in Karaganda, Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya boarding a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft that will be bound back to the training base in Star City, Russia, outside of Moscow. The International Space Station, traveling at a speed of 5 miles per second, is flying over the Indian Ocean, about to cross Jakarta in this current swing from southwest to northeast. There is a good view of the three vehicles on the Earth-facing side of the station. On the far left is the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft that is docked to the Prishal node module. In the center is the object of attention tonight. That is the Soyuz MS-24 docked to Rassvet, and which will depart less than 3.5 hours from now with O'Hara, Novitskiy, and Vasilevskaya on board. On the far right, with the ultraflex solar arrays clearly prominent, is the Northrop Grumman Cygnus cargo craft.
Well, there's nothing to show here. There's no more space. We can try that, but I will need to reposition it. Okay, let's leave it as is.
And a view in the Rassvet module of the hatchway to the Soyuz spacecraft as the crew members prepare to gather to bid farewell to O'Hara, Novitskiy, and Vasilevskaya. That is Oleg Novitskiy, who is wrapping up his 4th flight into space in a total of 545 days. He is the Soyuz commander for this evening. He'll be occupying the center seat of the Soyuz, again flanked on his right by Loral O'Hara of NASA, and on his left by Marina Vasilevskaya, the Belarus spaceflight participant who flew to the station under an intergovernmental agreement between Roscosmos and Belarus.
And this is the maximum I can offer considering cable length. We would need to use the extender to...
Novitskiy, O'Hara, and Vasilevskaya have conducted some onboard training of their entry and descent activities over the course of the last 10 days or so in preparation for their return to Earth. And there's the station commander, Oleg Kononenko. And a good view on the right side of your screen of Marina Vasilevskaya, the spaceflight participant. She and Novitskiy will be coming home in the wee hours Saturday U.S. time, after 14 days in space, 12 days aboard the International Space Station. The Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center, who are in charge of tonight's operation to bring the crew home, report that all of the Soyuz systems are in excellent shape, ready to support undocking that is scheduled just about 3 hours and 20 minutes from now. Once Novitskiy, O'Hara, and Vasilevskaya move inside the Soyuz and close the hatch, they'll conduct a series of leak checks to make sure that we have a tight seal at the docking interface before they depressurize the vestibule or small passageway between the two vehicles to vacuum, setting the stage for the command to open up the hooks holding the Soyuz in place. Of course, prior to undocking, the three crew members will suit up in their Sokol launch and entry suits and conduct other systems and communications checks before undocking. Again, the undocking is scheduled at 10:54 p.m. Central Time, 11:54 p.m. Eastern Time. Crew members will be gathering right there at the hatchway of Soyuz just a few minutes from now to say goodbye to each other.
How do you copy
I'll
me?
copy from
MRM1, we
MRM1.
copy you
We
loud
copy
and
you
clear.
loud and clear.
How do you copy us?
Do you copy us? So it's
So we started with the
difficult to position ourselves here.
pressurized adapter module. Oleg, whatever is convenient for you. Just for your information, can you copy me? Yes, of course. Go ahead, Oleg. So on panel 206, so there is emergency equipment. Also on the floor, there is the BMP filter. And panel 109 has the X on it. Then we remove the air ducts. So everything for MRM1 here, all the air ducts and hardware. Yeah, copy all, Oleg. Thank you so much. Okay, so the units and also the unit number 2, the assembly and unit number 2. Yes, that's correct. Excellent. Thank you.
This is Mission Control Houston. If you've just joined us, you're looking at International Space Station Commander Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos at the hatchway between the Rassvet module and the Soyuz MS-24. We should see other crew members gathering momentarily to say goodbye to one another as Oleg Novitskiy, the Soyuz commander, NASA's Loral O'Hara, and Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya board the Soyuz to begin preparations for undocking 3 hours and 15 minutes from now, the first leg of the journey home that will result in a landing, parachute assisted, on the steppe of Kazakhstan at 2:17 and 36 seconds a.m. Central Time Saturday morning, 3:17 and 36 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, which will be 12:17 p.m. in Kazakhstan. And Loral O'Hara, the returning NASA crew member, about to say goodbye to the rest of her crewmates. And there's the Soyuz MS-24. A brief glimpse as the crew members continue to gather in the passageway. There's Marina Vasilevskaya. And Soyuz Commander Oleg Novitskiy. As we prepare to see the 3 returning crew members enter the Soyuz, the report back from the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov is that Soyuz has been transitioned to autonomous power. And there's Loral O'Hara.
Expedition 21, and also, of course, expedition of ISS. Also, our greetings to you as well, and congratulations.
And with that, a final wave from Vasilevskaya and O'Hara, and now Novitskiy on board the Soyuz, having bid farewell to their expedition colleagues. Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya returning to Earth after 2 weeks on the station, O'Hara wrapping up 204 days aboard the orbital outpost. As Kononenko wipes down the hatchway interface before the hatches will swing closed. The International Space Station currently flying 260 miles over Osaka, Japan. The hatch closed on the Rassvet module side. We'll be standing by for confirmation of the Soyuz hatch closure.
Moscow station on space to ground 1. Go ahead on space to ground 1. The station hatch is closed. Oleg, copy all. We saw it all. Thank you. Everything is great.
This is Mission Control Houston. The hatch on the Rassvet and we now have confirmation that the Soyuz hatch has been closed at 7:45 p.m. Central Time, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time. So hatches on both sides of the docking interface between Rassvet and the Soyuz MS-24 that you see in your view. Both of those hatches are closed right on time, as the crew now on the Soyuz side, as well as the station crew, will begin a series of leak checks at the docking interface to make sure we have a tight seal before the passageway or small vestibule between the two spacecraft is depressurized in preparation for undocking.
Close the hatch. Copy.
Ну, перед закрытием ты подготовку выполнил, да?
Prior to closure, you performed the preparation steps. Remove the cap, for example. Yes, it's removed and stowed. I wipe down the surface.
Ну, КВД закрыт, да?
And the KVD pressure equalization valve is closed, yes? Yes, KVD is closed.
Тогда, Олег,
Copy.
работаем по книге «Спуск», 33-я страница.
Let's continue per the descent book, page 33.
Команды.
Okay, the commands I will put in work right now.
Веди репортаж, как будешь выдавать команды.
Please report down as you are putting in the commands. 337, command is in.
With the hatches closed between Soyuz and the station, the next step on the road home will occur about 3 hours and 5 minutes from now with the undocking of the Soyuz from the Rassvet module of the International Space Station. The Soyuz will move to a safe distance away from the station for the 4-minute, 41-second engine firing, a braking maneuver to enable the Soyuz to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. 23 minutes after the deorbit burn, the pyrotechnic command will be issued to separate the 3 sections of the Soyuz, leaving the descent module with the crew members strapped in their seats, heading towards the entry into the Earth's atmosphere, where temperatures will build to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. The next step will be the command to open the parachutes at an altitude of about 6.5 miles above the Earth's surface. It will be about 15 minutes between the chute deploy and touchdown, with the soft landing engines at the base of the Soyuz firing about 1 to 2 seconds before impact on the steppe of Kazakhstan. The crew will be home. Landing is scheduled at 2:17 and 36 seconds a.m. Central Time, 3:17 and 36 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, which will be 12:17 p.m. on Saturday afternoon at the landing site in Kazakhstan.
Command, make sure that S11 is illuminated. S11 is illuminated. How copy? Copy.
With NASA's Loral O'Hara, Roscosmos Soyuz commander Oleg Novitskiy, and Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya on board the Soyuz with the hatches closed, preparations will be continuing now for the undocking of the Soyuz from the International Space Station about 3 hours and 3 minutes from now at 10:54 p.m. Central Time, 11:54 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be back on the air with the undocking coverage beginning at 10:30 p.m. Central, 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time, as O'Hara, Novitskiy, and Vasilevskaya bid farewell to the International Space Station and head for their landing site on the south-central steppe of Kazakhstan. So stay tuned with us. We'll be back in just a few hours with all of that coverage. In the meantime, we'll wrap it up for now. This is Mission Control Houston.